Tim Albright with AVNation with an AVNation special, taking a look at the SCN Hall of Fame class of 2021. And with me today is Chris Schyvinck, CEO, President, and Chairman of Shure. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, Tim. Good
and
to see you.
Well, again, congratulations for making the Hall of Fame this year. Really big honor, really great class. So congratulations on that.
Well, I thank you so much. I was pretty surprised when I heard the news, and I'm very grateful and humbled by that. So I'm very honored. Thank you.
Let's take a look back, and something I'm kind of doing with all of our folks here is taking a trip back, and one of the fun things to ask folks in AV is how you got started, right? And I think that there are as many answers as there are people in AV, but you know, the typical pathway is, you know, either you were in broadcasting, you were in music, or you were some sort of engineering field. You are an engineer by
Correct.
trade. That's how you came up through Shure. So let's start back 20 or 30 years ago when you first, you got out of college and you got into Shure. What led you to join a microphone company?
You know, I had an interest in music all of my life. Although I have to admit, when Shure came on campus to do some interviewing when I was graduated, I hadn't heard of the company previously, because even though I was interested in music, I wasn't so much involved on the whole, sound side of things. I loved playing piano, loved playing French horn, but didn't really get involved with that technical side. So when Shure came on campus and I interviewed, I had a couple other offers in the hopper. There was just kind of I call it a gut feeling that I had about the company, because it really mixed, my education in mechanical engineering, and I could get a great job at a great company that also had a lot of people with a similar passion for music. And, we have musicians all over the place at Shure, and I am not one of the best, that's for positive, but that was the draw. I could have gone to a car company, I could have gone to a company making sensors, but that draw of music is what definitely brought me in.
And talk about that for a second, because that is one thing that's kind of interesting, especially in the AV field, is how many musicians, right? And let's be frank, we're all working in AV, so none of us have, none of us are rock stars, so we didn't make it that far. But talk about the kind of that underlying passion throughout this industry, and not just in Shure, right? Regardless of the company you look at,
Yeah.
whether it's an integrator or manufacturer, that musical thread seems to go throughout the industry.
Oh, I think I can be talking to anybody in the industry and feel like I'm talking to a friend or a neighbor, because there is something I think that goes with the technology side of a person's brain, and then the arts side. And I would say the heaviest percentage of engineers that we have in any division at Shure is in our engineering, and probably second in our marketing groups. So we are our own customers, we are our own beta testers, alpha testers, and we put into our products what we want out of them. So we can't stop inventing, because we're always looking for a better way to do what we like to do in our free time, I guess.
Yeah, that's one of the things is the folks that I've gotten to know at Shure. They do indeed have, home studios, and it's not just, oh, I have a microphone, and not just because, you guys were, a number of your employees were obviously set up for the pandemic crisis for having, good quality microphones at home. But these are folks who have recording studios at home, right?
Absolutely.
You mentioned the fact that they beta test your products. Well, they're already set up because they are already doing stuff like that.
They can do it at home. And back in the good old days, pre-pandemic, people would go and, they were doing a gig on the weekend, and they would take our products into whatever venue that they were playing in and be able to put them through the real test of any product.
Yeah, absolutely. Real world. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's kind of go through and because you had several different jobs at Shure, and I don't want to gloss over those, because I think each of them kind of added to you eventually becoming the president and CEO.
Right.
One of those, though, and then I would say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, the last 10, 15 years before you became president, had to deal with the global view of the company, right? Everything from global marketing, and you helped launch, I think, the Chinese manufacturing systems there.
Right.
But talk for a second about the need of as you're coming up, yes, you are an engineer, right? By again,
Mhm.
that's you've got that part of your mind, but also the experience that you've had at Shore to kind of get a global view, both figuratively, but also literally, of the market, but also of Shure as a company.
Well, when I was very early in my career at Shure, I got to actually start traveling out of the United States at a fairly early age, I guess I would say, because even when I started at the company in 1989, we had a pretty globalized supply chain. So I was in quality, heavily involved in manufacturing. We had manufacturing in Mexico, a lot of manufacturing in the US, but then a ton of suppliers in Asia. So I did spend a lot of time back and forth between Mexico and Asia and started to get a pretty global perspective at a fairly young age. Um, I also got onto the executive staff at a fairly young age. I got onto the executive staff in 1997. So that wasn't too long after I had started with the company. I was the head of quality at that point. So I had a lot of interaction with customers then, fairly early in my career too. People always have something to say about reliability, what they want the products to do, durability. Of course, it's what we are known for, but there's always things to be improving on. So I got to start interfacing with customers from that angle. And then to your point about starting up the factory then in China, eventually that opened up in 2006. That was a period when I was running all of our entire supply chain. So our manufacturing plants, the supply base, doing the purchasing, still had quality. And that's when things were becoming very, very competitive from a margin standpoint
Yeah.
and needing to really lower the cost of production. So we did a lot of streamlining in the early 2000s. That was a really active time in terms of consolidating manufacturing, deciding what part is really core that we wanted to keep and maintain ourselves because we wanted to maintain that quality, and which parts could we actually outsource, which were some tough decisions because we had done a lot of these processes for a long time. And I'm a manufacturing person, coming
Yeah.
into the company. And here I am deciding what kind of things are we going to keep and what kind of things will we actually outsource. But by outsourcing, then we were able to free up, funding, if you will, to really focus more on forward technology. So then we started heavily investing more in our engineering engine as well as our go-to-market engine. So then by the time I went from operations into the global sales and marketing role, I had this, very global mindset. And we were starting to take our center of gravity being the United States and putting people from a go-to-market perspective in all parts of the world. I started at the company, we had 5 locations, all in North America. And we sit here today with about 36, 37 places because you can't know what the customer needs sitting in Niles, Illinois. So we invested, we had maybe been investing in the past in heavier manufacturing. We invested in forward technology and getting feet on the street in all of the key places all around the globe. So I guess it's been 30 plus years of just increasing the global mindset and getting closer to our customers. That's really been the journey.
What are those aspects of getting closer to the customer is creating experience centers.
Mhm.
And you have opened up a number of these, and I could be wrong on this. I want to say the latest one is in London.
Yes. Mhm.
So talk about that connection there, right? Because not
Yeah.
only do you have offices and do you have obviously representatives in country, right? Whether that's in
Mhm.
India or Australia or London and different parts of Europe, but creating spaces for folks to come in and
Mhm.
experience your technology, but also to provide feedback to you. Say, you know what, this is a great microphone, but could it do
Right.
this? Right. Talk
Yeah.
about that connection there.
Yeah, that is critically important for products, especially needed for business to business communication. The London Experience Center, I'm glad you know about that one. It's an interesting time of year because I think it was almost a year ago to the
Hmm.
date
Yeah.
that I went to London for the grand opening of that center. So, you can describe to people how a product works and you can give all the technical features, but until you actually sit and listen and experience something yourself live and in person, it's really hard to understand what the true difference is. So that's why we started creating the experience centers, to do that, to be able to show what our solutions actually do, to show their ease of use, to show the audio quality, but also then, like you just said, it's a perfect way for us to continue that interaction with our customers. I firmly believe, and this is a little bit of a place where the pandemic hampers us. I firmly believe that sitting shoulder to shoulder with customers, observing what they are doing in their work environments, what's their workflow, where are they hitting, hurdles, what kind of things are they doing, which you can observe and say, there's a lot better way to do that. There's a much better way. As opposed to just asking them. You really, you get kind of a two-dimensional conversation when you ask somebody what they want, because they're coming from the boundaries and the paradigm and the mindset of what they know today. And you may be working on something in the lab that they can't even conceive of at that moment. And so until you're sitting there in their environment and seeing what's happening, or you're observing them in your experience center, there's no replacement for that, I think. And that's why we have opened up all these different locations around the world. You don't just get it by asking those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of take a turn here and talk about your position in the industry. One of the things that is fascinating to me is you're not only one of the few, you're a female executive, female CEO. Let's just, you are a female CEO in the tech industry. That is unique in and of itself, right? And then we go farther down the tail. You are one of the few, and again, we can probably count on one hand, in the AV industry. Talk about why that's important, and talk about, not just the need for representation, but also the need to have more females in STEM and more females in engineering roles and also in leadership roles.
Well, it's a topic that I have a true passion about, and it goes beyond, diversity with, getting more females into the technical work field. It's just diversity in general, because I just told you about all the different places that we have offices around the world. How would we be able to address that diverse customer base if we didn't have a diverse workforce ourselves? It goes hand in hand. We don't know our customers if we're just too homogenous of an organization. So I think when it comes to the technical fields, whether you're looking at STEM careers or you're looking at fields in AV, there's a pipeline problem, is how I like to think of it. So, you can here now and today be active in your recruiting and be looking for diverse people, but if there's not enough folks coming in through that pipeline, it's going to be a perpetual problem. When I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, there was hundreds of engineering students graduating that year from the University of Wisconsin. 3 of us were girls in the mechanical engineering program that year. It hasn't gotten much better, especially in mechanical engineering. So the pipeline for me starts really at the junior high and high school age. I think there's a lot of education and active things that people in industry can do. I think there's more access for younger women to get into technology fields now compared to, say, 20 or 30 years ago. There are really good applied technology departments in most high schools. There are organizations that girls can join. There's Girls Who Code, there's Tech Bridge. There's a lot of different clubs that weren't around, back in my day. But girls might still need a nudge to get involved in those organizations or in those kind of classes in high school, because they may think that's not for me. All the guys are joining that. So that little nudge comes in the form of, again, what can those of us in industry do? Well, we can look at taking on mentorship. You can, if you know somebody who has a girl that's entering high school and she's thinking about, should she take one of these, engineering STEM classes or something else, you can sit down with her for a couple hours, half a day, talk about what you do in your job, and start to dispel a lot of myths that are out there about what technology fields really are. I think a lot of people have a picture in their mind that doesn't involve the full range of things that people do in technology and in AV, that it's a creative, sort of job, that you work with other people in teams and collaboration, and that there is kind of a little bit of art to the science as well. So I think some mentorship, bringing, if it's a take your daughter to work kind of day or something like that, it doesn't even have to be a special day. Getting kids to come into your company and maybe visit your, your recording studio, getting kids to visit the engineering department and see what people are working on, see them, printing a 3D prototype of a design and ask the kids if they like it. Simple ideas like that, just to generate some curiosity and some enthusiasm around what we do in our field. And again, just debunk whatever sort of picture somebody young might have in their mind about what you do in these fields. Because if you don't capture somebody when they are pretty much into their high school years, then diverting them into that direction in college and then in their ultimate careers becomes almost impossible. So it has to start at a pretty early age.
Yeah, absolutely. And as somebody who was one of 3 women to graduate in your college class, I can imagine that you had your share of adversity, right? Of folks, saying, you don't, I either overtly saying, Chris, you don't belong here, or, somewhat, not necessarily overt. What would you say to your young woman who, whether she was in high school, considering this, looking at it as a career, as she faces some adversity? Because unfortunately, I can almost guarantee you that they will. What would you say to them?
You know what, for every person that you might find more negative, you can find at least 3 times as many more that are more positive. I was very fortunate. Sure has a culture where people are very open and sharing and friendly. So I was able to find mentors at the company pretty readily and to be able to help me. I was a little bit more on my own when I was in college, but I actually did find the Society of Women Engineers. So
Okay.
I was able to join a group and be able to sort of, collaborate, commiserate with what people were going through. And it wasn't long, after I joined that group, and that's still a very active group on campuses, I know, that I opened myself up a little bit more. If I was having difficulty in a class, I would join a study group and I would find out that I wasn't the only person in the class that didn't understand something, that, all of us had a problem that we had to solve together. But sometimes when you're the only one in the class and you look a little bit different, you think, oh, I must be the only one that's not getting this. And you just have to be willing to advocate for yourself a little bit, to ask some questions, either find a mentor or find a team to work with. So that's my advice, is don't be afraid to ask any and all questions. And I think sometimes girls especially are a little bit shy about raising the hand. We think we can figure it out on our own or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who has struggled in school, I guarantee you're not the only one, because there's at
Yeah,
least me in your class.
right.
I want to head something real quick before we let you go, and that is the culture that you kind of got brought up in with Mrs. Shore, right?
Yeah.
You were lucky enough to work there alongside her,
Mhm.
obviously before she passed. Talk about that culture that she was able to cultivate there.
It's interesting for you to ask that question, because Sure has a very distinct culture, and I think it was born out of her and her husband. Mr. Sure, as the founder of the company, they had very, very high ethics, and early on defined what the core values of the company are, and we still uphold those core values today. They've stood the test of time of like 8 decades. A heavy belief in making high quality products, being a good community citizen, and treating everybody fairly and with respect. So that's how we all interact with each other internally, with our business partners, with our suppliers. It is very much ingrained in the culture. What I found interesting, being aside her for about 20 years, was that was certainly what she exuded, and people, our associates, definitely came first. The part that many associates, other than people like myself, maybe didn't see, was that she also had a very keenly sharp business mind, and she probably grew the business at a faster clip in her 20 years than her husband did. If you look at the annual rates of growth under her, they were extremely high. And I think that's the balance, having that business sense and balancing that out with having the right people on the team, being able to motivate the right people on the team, that was her magic formula. And, to the best that I've been able to, that's what I'm trying to sustain and make sure that, all of those wonderful elements of the culture and the care and the ethics carry on while still, running a healthy business. Because if you run a healthy business, then you're going to be able to do more for more people.
Absolutely. One of the aspects of Sure that I also found fascinating is the tenure, the average tenure,
Yeah.
right? Talking with a buddy of mine that works there in the Niles slash downtown Chicago office when
Hmm.
you guys are obviously in office. Um, he said for the first 10 years he was there, he was called the new kid.
Hmm.
Because the
Yeah.
average, and that goes back to the culture though, right? It
Hmm.
is that culture. It is the, creating that environment where people just quite frankly just want to stick around.
Well,
Um, you know,
I think it's not just that the elements of the culture I just described, but it's also like, think about the career that I just described for you. How many different jobs have I had at the company? A lot.
yeah, a lot.
And I'm not alone. I'm not alone there. People are able to branch out and try different things. And again, I don't know that that's unique to Shure. I think that's the way that the world of audio changes, and we're always trying to keep up with the latest technology. And that's part of the draw. You're always learning something new. So that was my career, but I share that with many other people at Shure. They've done a lot of different jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. As we wrap up here, we'll kind of give you the opportunity to look ahead. Quite frankly, because of 2020, I've stopped asking people for 5 years. I think it's kind of silly, but
Yeah.
but if you want to take 5 years, knock yourself out. I'm just going to simply ask maybe a year, possibly 18 months. Where do you see the industry, either economically or from a technology standpoint? Where do you see
Mhm.
the AV industry over the next year and a half?
Well, I think that many people say about the pandemic that it accelerated a lot of trends that were already occurring. And I firmly do believe in that. And some of the trends that I think have been happening in the world of audio for a long time is that we need to be flexible. So whether it's how you're doing a live performance or how you're doing conferencing, the acceleration button has been pushed. And I think down the road, we'll be looking at performances that combine live and streaming. And we'll be looking at companies that are hybrid in terms of some people working remote, some people being in the office. And the way that they work in the office is going to be different. The
Yeah,
pendulum is not going to swing all the way back to where it was in February of 2020. So I think, to me, the word of the day is flexibility. Going
love
forward,
that.
we're all going to have to figure out how to outfit many different rooms per sound, how to do performances in multiple different ways. And, there's not going to be a one size fits all anymore. And again, that was a path that we were already heading down. But now it's definitely going to be one size is not going to fit all. We're going to have fairly custom solutions for a lot of different venues and a lot of different rooms.
All right, I like that, Chris Schyvinck, and the newest inductee into the SCN Hall of Fame for 2020. Thank you so very much. Congratulations again.
Thanks,
Um,
Jim.
how do people get a hold of you or Short if they are so inclined?
Sure.com.
All right, very good. Chris Schyvinck from Short for us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find programs like this and a host of others where you can see our interviews with all of the entire class of the 2021 SCN Hall of Fame. All of that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.